Thank you so much. Thank you, Ilya, Oksana, for inviting me to this most interesting conference. So, in my presentation today, I will examine the post-Soviet Petroaesthetics with reference to the work of two contemporary artists, Andrei Molodkin and Aidan Salahova. And these artists may be considered as part of contemporary Russian so-called conservative avant-garde. They were very close to Timur Novikov's circle in St. Petersburg in the 90s, and Timur Novikov is famous as Russian Andy Warhol. And he was also the one of the first post-Soviet artists to turn to the theme of oil, having creating in 1991 his famous work on a square of black polyethylene oil spill in the Persian Gulf. So Novikov and his followers saw a new future in the combination of the archaic and cutting-edge technologies. All of them link oil and other telluric substances with the discourse of soil, tradition, and war, with mythological and folkloric narratives, and speculate on the fate of the organic tectonics in neoliberal digital modernity. If Soviet artists captured industrial landscapes, the oilers themselves, their working enthusiasm and heroism, the fruits and conditions of socialist labor, then in contemporary Russian art, working on the theme of energy resources, human labor disappears. What remains is a mysterious post-human black substance which commands the post-socialist world. So oil becomes the foundation of ideological and cultural myth only in the post-Soviet period. In Soviet figurative art, petroaesthetics never managed to fully form. The key ideology for the Soviet industrialism was certainly coal, and the miner became the most glorified figure in the Soviet workers' pantheon. Oil remained a regional cultural concept, being realized above all in the work of Azerbaijani, Bashkir, and Tatar artists. So Azerbaijani artists, Tahir Salahov, for example, Rasim Babayev, and Nadir Kasumov, made the most significant aesthetic petro-statements. Their numerous works from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s in the laconic severe style, Суровый стиль, focus on the theme of oil extraction and feature geologists, oil workers, and industrial landscapes, object of oil infrastructure, and so on, as you can see in these examples. So what happens after the fall of the Soviet Union then? We have, as I already mentioned, two, maybe group of artists which work with the theme of oil. And what is interesting is that they are all critiquing neoliberalism from the right. So Andrei Molodkin is today maybe the most famous contemporary Russian artist working with the topos of oil. He became famous as a critic of the oil dependency and commodity colonialism in the middle of the 2000s. In 2005, in the installation Democracy, Molodkin presented the word democracy cut into an acrylic block. The transparent letters are filled almost to the brim with black oil, rhythmically pumped through pipes. And this and subsequent installations by Molodkin, medical, architectural, and geometric metaphors dominate. Dense liquids filling hollow shapes, tubes, letters, and statues. In 2007, in the work Black Square, Черный квадрат, Molodkin offered the viewer a new icon, an icon of the 21st century, a square plastic bag, 2/3 filled with oil. It's important to note here a reference not only to Malevich, but also to Timur Novikov and his famous Horizons theory. So Molodkin says, it's important for an artist to understand what is happening to the world. That's what I'm doing. I deal with oil as the main language, the political language spoken by Russia, spoken by the world, the current icon. And he continues, oil is a virtual image, a god of sorts, the god of industry or its blood, the blood of globalization. I want to show by filling avant-garde icons with oil that in principle there is no culture, that in an empty form that is filled with economics. His project Liquid Modernity, which brought Molodkin international fame when presented in London at the Art Sciences Gallery in 2009 and acquired by Tate Modern, refers to the popular concept of liquid modernity by Zygmunt Bauman. Crosses or prison bars filled with dark blood were shown in one of the halls. The bars were filled with a little over halfway, leaving 3 interconnected crosses empty and light, although with traces of blood on the inner walls. The view easily reads not only homage to Soviet constructivism, but also physically feels the bloody trail of religious and political order. On the other hand, the grid resembles a page from a school notebook, drawn up for a game of noughts and crosses. Soviet school and army disciplinary experience manifests itself both in ballpoint pen drawing, also presented at the exhibition, and in the choice of theme and material. In his interviews, Molodkin often connects the genealogy of his oil work with a transgressive experience of serving in the Soviet army and with a close acquaintance with prison aesthetics. In particular, he ascribes his main artistic technique, filling transparent cavities and vessels with liquids, to the art of the zone. In another room of this exhibition, oil is processed into light. The installation consists of 2 empty structures, resembling cages from a prison or a court. Through the pipes of one of the cages, oil is supplied to a miniature refinery, where it is converted into gas. The gas enters the mini electric power plant and becomes electricity, using which the second cell, consisting of 2 lamps, glows with very cold white light. So something ancient and dead, oil from dinosaurs, comes to life and becomes a source of light and new energy, but of course not warm as it used to be, but very cold. This is a dead light of screens, advertisements, and surgical rooms. In this project, the theme of transition, transfusion, and transmutation acquires an unambiguous character of a political statement. It is no coincidence that the sketch of the installation Liquid Modernity, in the sketch of the installation Liquid Modernity, the word light inside is painted over in black, and the word darkness is left white. Molodkin offers the viewer a visual critique of the colonial nature of the relation between Black Russia and the White West, and the neoliberal resource-based economy, because not only Russian oil flows to the West, providing it with light and energy, but also human substance. Arguing that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the population in Russia decreased sharply, but there was more oil to sell. The artist noted, I quote, "Maybe we are just sending people to Europe through a pipe, a new wave of immigration," end of quote. The comparison of oil and death already became commonplace to the post-Soviet culture in the 90s, thanks to 2 cult works. Yegor Letov is a famous leader of a famous punk rock group, Civil Defense. So Yegor Letov's song The Russian Field of Experiments, with the refrain "Eternity smells of oil," "Вечность пахнет нефтью," and also Victor Pelevin's novel Generation P and Pelevin's novels that he wrote in the 2000s. All these oil texts, as we know from Ilya Kalinin's works, I think are a pretext for Molodkin works. So according to Letov and Pelevin, the Russian man in the modern post-socialist world is only a machine, a pump for moving oil and future oil itself. Over-identifying with the hegemonic neoliberal ideology, Molodkin proposed to radically accelerate and optimize the process of converting the living and the dead into new energy. In an interview with art critic Dmitry Volchik in connection with the exhibition Black Horizon from 2019, the artist comments on his project of proceeding of corpses, human corpses, into oil, light and art, which began with the installation Liquid Modernity. And I quote, "There is nothing complicated there. Everything organic can be proceeded into oil, and this oil can be turned into diesel fuel. People can be completely proceed into oil. Why is there such a big passion in the world for killing people? I think people care about the future of oil in this way. The more people we kill now, the more oil there will be in the future." So actually his artwork is that he contacts people and people agree to proceed into oil after their death. Just one more example from Molodkin. Is the multimedia installation Red and Black, presented as a part of the Victory of the Future project at the Russian Pavilion of the 53rd Venice Biennale in 2009. Molodkin continues to develop his political alchemy. The artist filled one hollow and transparent copy of the statue of Nike with the blood of Russian veterans of the Chechen wars, and the second with Chechen oil. The projection of both goddesses on the screen combines both images with each other, visualizing the ambivalence of military victories. The black goddess of oil is knee-deep in blood. Immediately after the opening, this German biopolitical installation was censored. The artist was forbidden to give interviews, and the pavilion staff hastily removed the inscriptions, Chechen crude oil and blood of survivors of the Chechen war. Contemporary neoliberal resurrection of the dead through oil production, religious fundamentalism, and the emptiness of political rhetoric, new censorship, are explored by the artist in a number of other projects presented in Europe and the United States. So here you see just one of them. And recently he presented in October a project which connects oil and blood to the current war in Ukraine. But since I don't have so much time, I will continue to my second examples. And it's Aydan Salakhova. So Russian-Azerbaijani sculptor and artist Aydan Salakhova works on different cultural concepts related to oil and extraction capitalism. If Molodkin exploits the metaphors of oil and blood, then Salakhova's oil is thematized through the hybridization of feminist and Islamic contexts. The artist rethinks the established masculine discourse of fetishization and erotization of oil as sperm of the neoliberal world, and works with the less replicated topos of mother oil, neft matushka in Russian. Like other artists of this movement of contemporary conservative avant-garde, her works are characterized by a combination of classical figurativeness and constructivist minimalism, and an appeal to classic materials like white marble and black granite. International success and fame came to Salakhova in 2011 after a scandal at the Venice Biennale of Contemporary Art, at which she represented Azerbaijan. A few days before the opening of the Biennale, her sculptural works, Praying Woman and Black Stone, were censored by the Ministry of Culture of Azerbaijan, covered with clothes, and subsequently removed from the exhibition. In the sculpture Black Stone, all the actual transgressive metaphors, sex, oil, and religion, are combined with the help of minimal expressive means. The sculpture is a replica of the Muslim shrine of the Black Stone in Mecca. However, with two significant modifications. The frame is not made of silver, as in Mecca, but of marble, and the vaginal shape is accentuated. According to the artist, critics of her version of the Black Stone demonstrate the ignorance of Islam, since the marble frame exactly repeats the shape of the original frame of the black stone, which is now stored in Istanbul, in the Topkapı Palace Museum. Salachova's black stone is endowed with modern fluidity, and it's no longer a stone, but a drop of lubricant, a strange black substance flowing from the bottom of the Muslim tradition. Therefore, the work can also be read as a critique of crude neo-Orientalism and the idea of the Oil East as a pleasure zone. So, in the general process of network chronocirculation and total retromania, the appeal to modern artists of the theme of oil connects Putin's oil renaissance with the Soviet Petro 70s and 80s. An example of the posthumous existence of the Soviet visual oil text can be the modern work of Aydan Salachova's father and teacher, Tahir Salachov, which I mentioned earlier in my talk. In particular, his triptych from 2007, The Land of Fire, which connects socialist, realist industrialism with the current neo-mythological and occult interpretation of oil as a telluric treasure and a gift from God demanding sacrifice. The very name of the triptych refers to the ancient name of Azerbaijan, Land of Fire, a place of pilgrimage for fire worshippers. 3 monumental paintings, Temple of Fire Worshippers, Caspian Today, and Maiden Tower, combine Soviet modernism and the ancient cult of oil fire. If the central element of this triptych is a traditional motif of an offshore or platform, like we see in Soviet industrial paintings, then the right and left elements depicting the Ateshgah of Baku and the Maiden Tower, refitted with flare stacks and link this oil production, contemporary oil production, with Zoroastrianism. And finally, for the first time in contemporary oil visual culture, we see people, they're very small, but people are there. They return to the contemporary art, but of course not as masters as they used to be, but as slaves. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for talk, and we have now some time for discussion, so questions, maybe comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting us discovering also all these artists, and I wonder about the reception of their work in Russia and abroad. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes. 2 main artists, which I mentioned, Molodkin and Aydan Salachova, I would say global artists because they were born in the Soviet Union, but now live in Paris and Carrara in Italy, Salachova, and they have numerous personal exhibitions all over the world. So I think they are very well received and sell their paintings and artworks for really big sums. But they're well treated even in Russia. Maybe not the latest project after 2022, but before that, Salachova is a member of Russian Academy of Art. And Molodkin, yes, he had many exhibitions in Russia as well. So there is a critique, of course, of the neoliberal oil-based capitalism, but also banks and companies buy their art, of course. And that's the situation with all contemporary critique, which we see, artistic critique of oil dependency that we see in Russia. They're still very popular. Yeah, very ambiguous situation.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of years we did a research trip to Baku and saw a lot of these paintings, actually some of them, some of those that you showed. And also we researched for an exhibition, an art exhibition on oil that was shown in Wolfsburg. And Molodkin was also among the artists, but then, I don't know, we had a problem with the bluntness and cynicism, but also I remember that it was difficult reaching out, but now you're saying, so the question I had wanted to ask you was, what is this guy doing now? Because all the works that I found were from like 2009 and 10 and so on, but then you showed more recent things, so obviously he was going on. So I have another question now, and that is, but it's also related to this Molodkin work that is related to the Black Square. And I was wondering, that's one text we wrote in our atlas where we interpret the Black Square also as that it could be interpreted as a very, very early depiction, not only as a starting point of the avant-garde as such, but also as the interconnectedness of modern art with oil right from the beginning, because it's kind of like an energetic thing as well. And this is a question I wanted to ask you, because Molodkin seems to kind of very bluntly draw the connection to politics and bodies and so on all the time, but I was wondering if you came across other artistic works that try to track possible spiritual connections to this whole oil extraction business, and how Petromodernity East may differ also in the way that it's connected back to old Russian spiritual traditions that significantly differ from, for example, the religious tradition in the US.
Very good question. What I can see in Molodkin, because he's a part of the Simonovikov circle, and they were very interested in the occult, because it's a part of late Soviet underground culture with a huge interest into the alchemy and occult art and texts. And of course, we know that Malevich was also very interested in these questions. So I think there is a connection to the spiritual tradition, but as I called my talk dark Petroaesthetics, it's really, we can connect it to the, it's mostly, not so much Molodkin, but his friend, which he collaborates with. It's a very famous right-wing or alt art painter and artist Bileev Gintoft, and I just show you because I have it here. In the works of this artist, you can see much more explicit references to alchemy, and he at least writes about contemporary Russia and all dependency as a Nigredo stage of this transformation of Russia. So Russia is now, after the end of the Soviet Union, in the Nigredo state. That's why this black substance is so important. As you know, the 3 stages of alchemic process, Nigredo, and the black stage, the white stage, and the red stage. So as you could see, all the colors that this artist used are always these 3 colors: red, black, and white. So kind of the goal, as this circle of artists see for Russia, is to come to the rubedo stage, the red stage, where will be the transformation of Russia. But they see it as a return to the socialist. It is kind of the mix of right-wing and left-wing visions, utopian visions for Russia, or new right. I think that's the right term for this artist. So, but they work with this black substance And they're very critical, of course, of the current state of Russian culture, economics, and everything. So as I mentioned earlier, it is a critique of contemporary Russia, Putin's Russia, but from the right. So there is a lot of writing. I can recommend to look at Alexei Vyacheslav, who is much more into this mystical or mysterious or alchemy discourse. Yeah.
Can you say more about what it looks like to critique Putin from the right?
Yes, it's a very good question, because it's a dynamic there, because they were very critical to Putin in the Putin before, of course, Yeltsin, and earlier 2000s to Putin. But after Crimea, they of course changed their mind. So in early works, you can find much more critique. But they still treat current Russian regime as a neoliberal, and treat the conservative talk as a Potemkin village. It's just talk for the population. And they still continue to be part of global economy, and the whole foundation of Russian economy is still neoliberal. Of course, now after 2022, it's a different situation, and we also see the split in this group, because some of them are left in Russia and a very pro-regime like Alexei Vyacheslav, which is, I think, will be the main artist of current Russia. And his friend Molodkin is doing very critical work and criticize Putin. He recently showed his work where Putin is in plexiglass filled with blood of Ukrainian soldiers, for example. So the same technique, but now it's much more blood and less oil. Yeah, but it's there is a critique from the right, quite serious, but maybe it's another topic. But yeah.
Try to be brief. Maybe you said it before, but maybe you could reiterate why you actually picked these examples of what you called critique from the right, and are there any other examples? Because I mean, this nature of extractivism in Russia, exploitation of human and natural resources and transforming them, in imperialist politics or whatever. That matter. Well, there is a vast, I think, field for artistic imagination or critique. Are there any other examples of more maybe recent art works, art critique, which also uncover this colonial imperialist frames?
Since I'm a scholar of contemporary Russian conservatism, I'm mostly familiar with these circles. So there is several artists which I never mentioned, like Anton Chumak, but they're all a part of the circle. So I think they kind of course, they have different ways of thinking about contemporary Russian liquid modernity and oil dependence and so on. But still, it's I would say it's still kind of the same ideological position. Because, and it's an interesting thing, maybe I just don't know, the leftist artists who work with the theme of oil. But the interesting thing is that only kind of this critique or theme of oil is common among the alt-right or kind of conservative avant-garde artists, radical conservatives, like, National Bolshevik Party. Because their critique of the post-Soviet Russia is that the democracy that comes from the West kills people, and so they're very critical of Russia, contemporary Russian regime, but their critique, the result, as they see of the transformation, is Russia, which is not a part of the global economy. So what's going on today when Russia is cut off, kind of, not entirely, of course. But the rhetoric that Russia is a state civilization, which is can exist without, connection to the West, and all this turn to the global South, of course. They discuss it, of course, they welcome it, but I don't see any art, not yet, at least, which is produced after this kind of after the 2022, which we can call Russian conservative revolution. So I think there is there are attempts to create new art in Russia, and people who are left in Russia, they're mostly pro-regime artists. But still, there are new exhibitions. For example, I think just yesterday, this artist, Alexei Belyaev-Gintov, opened a huge exhibition in Moscow. But still, it's the same. It's nothing new aesthetically. It's the same thing that he was doing for 10 years ago.
Okay, thank you so much, Maria.